cover today. We'll try to find some answers to these topics. And it's my great pleasure to introduce to you our panelists. So the keynote speaker is Mr. Peter Birukov, the Deputy Mayor on Urbanism. And among our experts are Federico Cugurulo, the Dean for Smart Urbanism in Trinity College, Dublin, Rob van der Velde, Vice Mayor of Antwerp for City Planning, Diane Galbe, the Senior Executive Vice President of Suez, Natalia Markevich from Marsh Design School, and Ilya Mochalov from Mochalov and Partners. Peter Pavlovich, the floor is yours. Good afternoon, dear friends, dear colleagues. Allow me just to comment briefly on issues we try to sort out on the way to the goal set forth 8 years ago. In many years, we had a number of events that shaped the image of the city. But the relations between the city and people who live here, they were established several years ago. Not long time ago, we had a lot of fancies, malls with a lot of commercial interest. We had a lot of kiosks in the streets of the city, and the process was quite chaotic, without permits. And the recent global changes occurred in Moscow back in 1970s, before the Summer Olympic Games of 1980. And for today, our goal is to make the city convenient and comfortable for people with infrastructure, transportations, various public spaces, which would create a friendly atmosphere, which would be also comfortable for business people and investment. As you know, these factors are really critical for determining advantages of a megacity. The solution of our mayor from 2011, all the urban system was really focused on achieving this goal. From the backyards and squares and parks where we have created the infrastructure for leisure and for sports, for different types of events. And at the moment, there is a large-scale work, what we do under the ground. All the communications, all the utilities with water supply, with electricity, which really influences the everyday life of people. At the State Council, Mr. President said that the comfortable urbanism is a strategy which is being implemented in Moscow. The focus is to create a really comfortable environment. We are developing the environment. This is a major infrastructural project with many dozens, thousands of experts and specialists involved. Today we see a comfortable Moscow, a clean city. The entire city has become a public space. But let's recall where we were 8 years ago. We began with a goal set by Mr. Sergei Sobyanin, the mayor. The goal was to improve our yards and the urban system. We started to improve our backyards. Unlike in many other cities in the world, Muscovites can judge about the comfort on the situation we have in the backyards. We tried to improve all the yards and all the the doors. So, and in Moscow, so we spent budgetary money on improvement. So, unlike in many other cities, Muscovites do not have to pay for the improvement from their pocket. So it's all done from the city budget. If you would take backyards in Paris or in Berlin, their good condition would depend on the type of building, on the type of yard, on what type of people live there. And the contribution of every territory is different. So people actually contribute to urban improvement. We actually followed advice we got from our people to make some to improve special parks. So in different districts of Moscow, we identified territories with a recreational potential. So before, these territories were not used, so they had obsolete infrastructure or no infrastructure at all. So, but we developed parks in many districts of the city. So to enjoy your leisure time, you can go to any major park because you have everything required for the rest and for different types of hobbies. Of course, by 2010, we had about 130 parks which should be improved. So together with this work, we continued working with other parks. And for today, the number of parks grew from 130 to over 500. So this year, we will also improve 80 parks. To carry out this work, we always wanted to keep the historical image, the landscape and the architecture of the park, at the same time providing comprehensive and modern solutions. So we asked for feedback from local people. We asked people what they wanted, what type of infrastructure they wanted to have close to the place where they live. And only after that we moved ahead. So we used the world experience, the world's practice, and we got specialists not only from Moscow and Russia involved, but also some great architects, designers of the top world level. If you would look at my slides, you will see what we managed to achieve in all these years, what we could achieve. For example, Bratevskaya poem. It used to be an abandoned territory for 200 hectares. Now you see it's a major park on the bank of Moscow. 14 kilometers of path roads, and our goal is to have as many territories along the river as possible. For example, Moskvorezskaya poema. About 343 hectares were improved for Muscovites to spend their leisure time there. The next question was on how to put things in order on major streets. And Moscow is considered by many as one of the best cities in the world. So it has a blend of historical monuments which contribute to this unique image of the city. So for Muscovites to enjoy the city, so back in 2012, we made our first attempts in Kamergersky side street and then Stoleshnikov side street. At that point of time, we really tried to ask for the expert opinion from the world-class urbanists. And we decided to move away from the idea which existed long ago from this city for cars. We decided to have a city for pedestrians, for Muscovites and guests of the capital. So we took into the account all the floors. So we spoke to urbanists, and the solution was made to announce My Street program. And today, Sergei Sobyanin said that we will move forward to focus on my neighborhood, my city. So these unprecedented measures, historical measures, would continue to move away from the third ring road, and actually we will come to all the territories following requests from Muscovites. And our goal was to transform territories, and we would like our streets to be recognizable, modern, to restore the historical image, to make public spaces more accessible, to provide space for leisure, also to put our parking lots in order. The city should be comfortable and safe. And I would like to share with you some figures. If before 2012 we had just one pedestrian street, the old Arbat, today, in just 4 years, this number grew up to 327 streets with the length of 311 kilometers. And of course, working here, we need to combine interests of the drivers and of the pedestrians, and we managed to do it. So we we no longer have any bottlenecks, and we added some extra lanes, and the speed for traffic grew by 7%, and the pedestrian flow grew by 2 times. It's important that at this stage of design we can take into the account all wishes from the Muscovites, because Moscow is the city for Muscovites, for the people, and there was like an active citizen platform, so we talked to citizens, to residents, and we made decisions based on the feedback. And we were actively involved trying to renovate the garden ring. We were planting trees at the garden ring. We worked at the boulevard ring, the Kremlin ring streets. We were actively working at Tverskaya Street, creating additional comfort and improving. There was some archaeological works carried out. We tried to show people the way our city looked hundreds of years ago, like in Khokhlovsky Street, where we so we tried to create the Moscow Central Ring at the area of 300,000 hectares. In a couple of months, we improved the territory. We provided the access ways and a wonderful landscape when you would move along the ring road. It would not be possible to carry out these works without the cumulative code for improvement. It was developed several years ago, and it divided all types of streets in 10 categories. So the documents allows for 30 options for zoning, over 150 layout solutions, and the code includes many requirements. So at the same time, we're working on the standard for improving the recreational infrastructure in Moscow, backyards, territories close to the metro stations, parks, and many other major sites. Apart from these standards, we try to use typical solutions for certain elements of the infrastructure. For example, when we would put the sidewalk rock, it would not be possible to fine-tune. So sometimes this curb is 40 centimeters high. So together with our plans, we had to work on elements, the components which are prefabricated, and later on we put them in place on the streets as if it were like Lego cubes. And we get very positive acclaim and feedback from the residents. The city cannot be nice without good lighting solutions, and we worked on certain types of lighting fixtures, different for different types, depending on whether it's a main street or a secondary street or a historical street. So we managed to get back to historical lighting fixtures in all our city central streets. And together with lighting, it was an architectural and artistic support. So you will see that the thorough ways you see lighting on the bridges in the most popular and the most important historical places. So as part as My Street program, more than 3,600 buildings were actually restored. And I'm proud to mention it again that we managed to give back plans to the central streets which were lost back in 1990s. More than 13,000 trees were planted on the Garden Ring, on Arbat, on Tverskaya Street, and trees which were planted are trees which are with an age of 40 to 50 years. So, and today we can tell you that this experiment was successful. From 12,000 trees, only we have to remove only 7 or 9 trees. The rest of them are grow in the streets, and guests and residents of the capital can enjoy them. And we are proud to say that today Tverskaya is a wonderful lime tree paradise. We don't see any ropes or cables. They are hidden in underground pipes with the total length of 2,000 kilometers. So when you remove the cables from the street, it's a wonderful look. It's a safe operation, and this is about high reliability of power supply. And if you have something extraordinary, then our sanitary aviation, our emergency situations ministry aviation, so can deliver medical crews, can contribute to firefighting. And today we are concerned about comfort on the road.
So we've started to go the second circle, and the other one we've renovated the pavement, we've renovated the highlights, and the city looks comfortable. We're trying to stick to new norms. We've tried already, and Muscovites asked us to look at the opportunities of the drainage system. So we've tried to do our best to change the lines, to change the angles, and we've worked many kilometers of the drainage systems. So what did we do? We have now twice and sometimes 4 times as many pedestrians in the streets as than earlier. So we have 150 million people who have participated in different street fests. Speaking about road accidents, we have 37% less them now so far. We have also 7% less speed for cars going around Moscow. So we have 1.8 times more tourists in Moscow. The turnover of shops and cafes on improved streets has improved 30%, and we have now only 10% non-improved streets compared to 35%. Concerning Boston Consulting Group, Moscow is now ahead Boston, Shanghai, and many other cities concerning success rate, infrastructure, and the citizens' perception of what they see around on their streets. Ecological effect is and can be counted by billions of benefits. Speaking about funds and allocations for comfort in the street was repaid. And for some streets, this repayment was within 1 year, and for some other streets within 2 years maximum. We now have feedbacks from other streets in the center of Moscow and also from the outskirts to improve their streets in accordance with the modern standards. So we're trying to do our best to do those streets as good, as modernized as those we have modernized already. So, my dear friends, we're now using national and international experience of our colleagues. Everything which is the best in the world is in demand here in Moscow and will be in demand further. So I'm happy to invite you to participate in our further innovation. Thank you for our collaboration, and I wish you all the best for the future. Good then. Thank you very much, Mr. Byrykov. I have loads of questions concerning your presentation. Unfortunately, I cannot ask all of them, but I would like to stop at one personal thing. Do you have any favorite place in Moscow? And if yes, then why? In Moscow, it's difficult for me to specify what place is my favorite, because all the territory of Moscow has been suffered by me and by all my team. And what we have today is, our effort. So we are going around Moscow on foot, let me underline that. And so we go around all our Moscow, and this is our favorite Moscow. Thank you very much. My next question is to Mr. van der Velde. For many years, you've been vice mayor of Edmonton, and you were responsible for planning, legacy, and improvements. So, do you think can the progress we have in Moscow concerning improvement, does it correspond with your experience? Does it have anything to do? Would you probably give Moscow a piece of advice how to improve the quality of Moscow and of the environment?
First of all, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to be here, and secondly, I think the amazing effort that Moscow is doing, not only in terms of investments but also in gathering people to think about the city, is I think is superb. The way Antwerp is a pocket metropolis. We're a small city, but a city with a lot of different angles who are exactly the same as a big megapolis. We have a big harbor, the third biggest harbor in the world. We have a very massive chemical industry, main investor and trade center of diamond, and a fashion center. So economically, we are a main driver in the mainland. And together with that, we had, during the, let's say, the last decade and decades, we suffered exactly the same issues as bigger cities like Paris, like Moscow, like New York, and so on. A city getting older, not only in terms of buildings, in terms of public space, but also a city getting older in terms of people. And when you start investing and you start to think about how your city should move in the future, there's a hardware and there's a software. And the hardware is the infrastructure, is the buildings, and so on. And the software is what kind of people do you want? Your university, your technology, your creativeness. And during a transformation period, can I ask the slides? Do I have to? Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Because we prepared a couple of slides. I'll try to run through quickly, not to take too much of your time. But during a 12 years of transformation, we started with a global structure plan, which was basically a structure on the hardware. The city recognized the flaws that led to, let's say, the citywide structure plan. What we saw was that interesting people left the city at the age of 30, 32. We don't know whether the relation to having children had to do with it, but we think it did, because people left the city, and so a good plan needed to be made. The structure plan was put in place, which was good, but it didn't move fast enough. And when you look at the opportunities that Moscow took, and I listened carefully to the mayor when he said we needed to speed up. Well, speed is a critical factor in redeveloping, in renewing your cities. Today's generation and generations don't have the time to wait. So don't waste time, and that's what we need to do also as a city. So we changed and made a paradigm shift during the period of 2013 to 2016, and made sure that we speeded up our economy. We speeded up our renewal of city areas, and made a global plan to put. And that was the title, The City of Tomorrow, to bring together what we wanted as inhabitants, what we wanted as, let's say, as a liveliness, as a quality of living in the city, together with the hardware. And the results start to show now. And basically, for us, the basic idea was winning the war on talent. If we succeed in bringing young people, creative people to the city starts to live. And look at what happened with the World Cup here in Moscow. Okay, they all didn't stay. They are back home, but they brought a complete different atmosphere to your city. And that's why we need younger people. That's why we need to create nice spots where people can live together. And we defined 6 to 7 different drivers of winning the war on talent. The first was an inspiring technological environment, the ecosystem where you integrate university, business and government. Mobility, so both socially and physically, you have to be able to move through a city. If you don't move, you don't want to be in the city. But also from a social point of view, you need to be able to move up to get better, to improve your skills. Lively neighborhoods was the third. Adequate services. You need schools, you need daycare centers. If you don't have enough, people flee from the city because there's, if you want double income families, as soon as they get children, they need a daycare center. So as soon as the children become 6 years, they need a school. A healthy environment. I think most of our megapolises are suffering from the same, being both air pollution and noise pollution. Both of those elements need to be addressed in the way you lay out your city, and of course a safe environment. We made it together with a plan stating in every one of those areas, let's say, the biggest wins and the biggest investments that we needed to do. For instance, on the healthy environment, bottom middle, cap the ringway. We have a ringway of about 7 kilometers going right through the city. It's been a project which was blocked for like 25 years to renew the ringway. But finally, due to a participation project together with all our city people, we've managed to now have this cap which will be built during the coming years over the ringway to make sure that we get down noise and air pollution. Of course, when you talk about inspiring technological environment, you need to bring together university with skilled and creative people. We created two basic, very big investments. One is the Blue Gate Industry Center, which is an eco-effective and water-related economic development, where we try to bring companies together with university, integrating university and research and our chemistry industry to make sure, or chemical industry, to make sure that they create a network of creative and knowledge. And also, as a city, we've put in place a startup village where we offer the buildings and we attract young people to start smaller companies. One of the good things that happened was that you know these signs, no parking signs. When you move and you put them in the street, with chalk you put the dates on where you can't park your car. Well, together with a startup company, we digitalized the whole process and made sure that we bought back from startups. Antwerp is the biggest buyback from startups city.
Rob, I'm sorry, I need to think about timing.
Absolutely. I'll quickly go to the last slide, because all the examples can be thought, and it's to communicate, and that is what the Vice Mayor just said as well. It's not only by planning, but it's also about communicating with the people who live in your city, make them part of the process. We created a book, we created a website, and made sure that they could follow everything that is happening on the city side. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Rob. Мой следующий вопрос.
My next question is to Diana Galba. We know that Company Sets is an international leader of infrastructure. Maybe not of you know why this name is like this. They also started constructing Suez Channel. So what is your understanding of trends of infrastructure and is Moscow in line with the international trends for infrastructural development in the world?
Thank you for allowing me to speak at this panel. I must say that the city will leave a particular impression to me as a French citizen, given the event of last weekend. And I would like to say that the city of Moscow was largely praised for the efficiency and the comfort it brought to the massive tourists that came to see the World Cup. And it is very important because it shows that Moscow is already one of the top-ranking cities in terms of providing efficiency and comfort. And could I have the remote? Sorry, oops, right here, thank you. And this attractivity and comfort is key because, as the mayor of Moscow explained this morning, the competition between megacities is arising, and here you have a map, a view of the megacities by 2030, Moscow being the megacity in Russia, with almost 20 million inhabitants, with the Great Moscow project. And we talked about the war on talents, and this competition within cities is extremely interesting because we will have 65% of the world population attracted within these cities, and they will generate 70% of the world GDP. But at the same time, it means that this megacity will concentrate resource consumption. So they will be huge consumers of natural resources, of electricity, of water, of materials, and they will also emit pollutions. So our vision in my company is that the city of tomorrow, to attract and to keep its talent and to attract new talents, will have to be a resourceful city, meaning a city which will not only consume, but which will generate its own resources. And we are talking a lot about smart city, and smart city is not a mean to an end. It's just a tool to enable a vision of its citizen, and thanks to digital and thanks to new technologies, we will be able to enhance attractivity and environmental friendly systems. So both the security, the transport, but also the water and waste management systems are progressing tremendously over the last years, and in 5 years' time, we will see a huge increase in the comfort of the inhabitants. I'm thinking of solutions which will enable resiliency of the city. So, for example, with data management, we will be able to predict stormwater, heavy rain, for example, episodes, and to prevent this episode with real-time management of the systems. We will also be able, thanks to technology, to treat micropollutants in water, which are not treated today. And as far as waste management is concerned, instead of dumping the waste near to the city and potentially creating pollution, we will be able to recycle, and we are recycling in terms of energy or in terms of new materials which can be used within the city. As an example, I would like to share with you also, because city like Moscow are historical cities. So they are launching renovation programs, and in terms of comfort, it can create actually nuisance to the citizens, because when you tear down something like 5,000 buildings, you create massive transportation, dust, waste. And so thanks to technology, today we are able to anticipate that with 3D modeling and reusing all the waste generated by this type of urban revamping projects on site to minimize the nuisance for the inhabitants and also contain potential pollutions of the air. So these are some examples of state-of-the-art technologies that we can offer to to cities. But definitely, to answer your question, Moscow is already one of the top ranking in terms of efficiency, and it has been proven during the World Cup recently. Thank you.
Спасибо большое, Диана. Мне кажется, что да, проблема.
Thank you, Diana. So what you mentioned, like waste recycling, is a really key problem for Moscow. And we're talking about Moscow. Yes, so you know that Moscow is alive 24 hours a day. So for Moscow to live at night, it should correspond, should comply with the requirements of residents that lead a nightlife. My question would be to Natalia Markevich. How would you evaluate lighting in Moscow, the night Moscow? Thank you. When we would talk about city, we always mean lighting. When we are talking about a comfortable city, to my pleasure and also those of my colleagues, we just don't talk about lighting as a layer which is only needed for utilitarian purposes. But we would also like to talk about smart schemes which would allow for people to live a comfortable life, a safe life. And a question about megacities. It is a very acute one, because megacity is a huge construction game, and the main aspect of how we perceive the city is how tourists perceive it at night. I will not comment on that topic today. It will be outside of the framework. But this is something easy, because the city should be recognizable. The silhouettes, the architectural landmarks. We need to discuss with the residents what they need, and moving a little bit away. So the first priority is safety, and Moscow made a huge progress. Even 10 years ago, we had yards without any lighting at all. Now light is available everywhere, and we would like not to have just lighting, but we would like to have a good quality of lighting. Not just the city should not be light, but we would like to see different sites, and in that race for the good lighting, we now want our city to be light at night as well. But we are not accustomed to living with the light all the time. And there are a lot of research done on how the availability of light influences our lives. So this light contamination, so it really influences animals and the universe. So how light influences a human being, what a human being requires from the light. So the more technologies we have, the more fed up with them we are. And we have some expectation from the progress, but we would like technologies to be customized, fine-tuned. We would like light to be where we need it, and to have no light where they don't need it, for the people to be able to have rest from the light. But on the same time, they would like to move in the city. So when you have too much light, it's not so good, because people may get tired of light. And if we are talking about the need to make city as light as possible, so you are getting to a situation when a person would not be able to hide away from the light only looking himself or herself up in an apartment and putting the blinds on. So at the moment we need oases to have some rest. So, and this Zaryadye Park is a good example. So it's like an island where you can have rest from the light. And my opinion, and the opinion of many researchers, is that this is the potential way forward for many mega cities. People are tired from technologies, and it's a little bit of exotic to stay alone, to stay offline. So maybe it would be exotic in future to come back home and stay with a candle close to a flower. So the world is being transformed as we see. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I think you mentioned some very, very important aspects, because the quality of our life really depends on how comfortable our light perception is. And my next question is connected to the first one. So when we're talking about lighting, we also talk about energy saving, because this is something from municipal budget. My next question is to Mr. Kugurlo. How would you evaluate the new method for improving energy efficiencies in megacities, and what areas of city economy can be seen as the most important in terms of improving the budget spent on electricity?
I'm an expert. I'm supposed to be an expert in sustainable urbanism and smart urbanism, but I can't get this device to work, so I'm just going to get rid of it. And worst case scenario, my Russian will get a bit better. So we're talking about really big issues, global issues, which are common across cities. And these issues, for example, we talk about lack of public spaces are common because there is a common denominator across cities. And the common denominator is the car. And more specifically, the space in the city that we reserve for cars. And cars have a huge impact on the energy which we consume in cities, and closely related to the topic of this session, they really impact on the quantity and quality of public space. Now, if you think about the city where you're coming from, if you close your eyes and you picture your city, and then you get rid of all the spaces for cars. You get rid of vehicle lanes, you get rid of streets for cars, you get rid of parking spaces, where suddenly your city would look very, very different. It would look almost empty. There would be a lot of voids. And the question is then, how can we use these voids? Well, we can use them to create public spaces. We can use them to create gardens, parks, and squares. So we can create places for people rather than spaces for cars. And the second question then is it possible to implement this vision? Yes, because although it's hard to think about cities without cars, we can think about cities with less cars. And the more cars we get rid of, in especially mega cities like Moscow, then the less spaces for cars there would be. And it's possible to do it, and today we have a unique opportunity to do so. And this chance is based on automation. It's based on autonomous cars, self-driving cars, and more specifically, and this is crucial, this will make the difference between success and failure. It's okay? Okay. Sharing services. We must use this technology through sharing services. So we're talking about shared autonomous cars. And we're working on a project in Trinity College Dublin. We know that a single shared autonomous car can replace up to 4 conventional cars. And think about a city then with less cars. We're looking at how car ownership will change. And we know that a lot of people are willing to share autonomous cars. And we're looking at how the city, the built environments, can be redesigned with less spaces for cars. And it is possible. We would love to share ideas with you on how we can redesign the cities, spending less energy and creating cities with more public spaces. So we can share ideas later during this conference, and perhaps in the future we can also share an autonomous car. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Federico.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. Car sharing is a very important part of city development, and we have quite interesting story in Moscow when we talk about car sharing. But anyway, we need to go. Мы затронем еще одну тему, связанную.
Or we will touch upon one more topic related to the quality of urban improvement. We would like to talk about landscaping, because in my opinion, the quality of city life really depends on how attractive the landscape is. And I'd like to pass it over to Ilya Mochalov and ask him how landscaping can influence attractiveness of a city and developing the city environment. So I'm the last speaker today, and I will try to make it in 5 minutes. So, of course, the goal voiced today by Sergei Sobyanin that Moscow competes with Paris, London, New York, we need to talk about what's going on in these cities. And when we would talk about how the city lives in terms of landscape, it should be comfortable, it should be beautiful, it should be safe. But allow me just to talk about the environmental aspects. And I like the example of Richard Michael Daley, the former mayor of Chicago. And I was lucky to meet him back in 2003. And since then, in Chicago, they have a Millennium Park, a wonderful concept of wild Chicago. So we all know about Wild West. So, but now the Wild Chicago is actually, yes, and I was surprised. The mayor didn't receive me in, well, he received me at the green roof of his office, sending a message for the development, for the society, on how the city should develop. And apart from the prayer, from wonderful prayer herbs, I found beehives at City Hall, at City Hall's roof. And of course, yes, we had our mayor, Yuri Mikhailovich Rushkov, who loved bees and beehives. Well, of course, Chicago changed a lot, and sadly, in Moscow, we don't have the fifth front wall. Another city, London, Boris Johnson, with his huge effort, think about these figures. every year London builds 100,000 green roofs. And from 2004, when the research began, the analysis showed that over 1 million square meters was created in the city. So, of course, there are benefits on the side of economy and environment. So, the Central Bank of London with ships, it's a fantasy, of course, but there are real design projects with ship on the roofs. What's also important, 32% of London can potentially have green roofs. And this was the research by the government of London. So this is the benchmark on where the city is moving. So what's the case in our city? So we have more than 3 square meters per person. In some areas, you have a lot of greenery, but in the central administrative district, we only have 3.55%. And the technology of green roofs could be potentially a helpful story. In Moscow, we are not targeting 32%, but if we offer if we put green roofs at least in 5% of the central administrative district, we will have 5 new Zaryadye Parks. Well, I am not saying that we need to put green roofs like in Stuttgart. So what is the problem? Sadly, the laws and regulations are not perfect. So green roofs are not considered as for comprehensive improvement. And I spoke to the Department of the City Development, so everyone says that they would like to support this idea, but sadly, at the moment, the state standard on green operational roofs is being developed. So, and I am working on this federal normative regulation, and I hope that this document will finally contribute. So, begin with yourself. It was the slogan by Richard Daley, and I'm happy. The office building at Sheremetьevskaya Street in Moscow from 2009, so it has green buildings where we don't do anything. So, like zero maintenance concept, a very clear vision for maintenance-free landscape. So plants grow themselves, so we don't need to water them, we don't need to cover them. And this roof is the same age as Highlight Park in New York. Yeah, but we need the regulations, we need laws and regulations. And in future, the new Arbat, the concept Moscow Sky, you know, the books about Stelabots of new Arbat. It would be nice to have a walking park like this at Arbat.
So why not? Why not having this kind of garages in the Moscow area? And the new concept is under this kind of gardens, there are cars and places for cars. Tverskaya could be a very good example for roofs. But let us start with the Moscow Duma, Sergei Chobnov, the good project. And the roof could look like this, having the nature and the bioavailability and different insects that could reproduce. Unfortunately, I don't have time, but Moscow renovation gives us all the opportunity for that. I've tried to cover it as much as possible, and thank you for your attention. Thank you, Ilya. Since you've been the last, not the least speaker, I would like to specify, a lot has been done. the city is great, but having listened to Ilya, I can say that there is room for development. And I would like to thank all of you, all the speakers, all the participants of the discussion. Unfortunately, we don't have much time, but I hope that all the participants have shared very interesting information with you, and you've managed to feel once again what is going on, what will go on, and what can go on. Thank you very much.